NFL news. Big news today. Big news today is Jordan Schultz. It's twins. We get to break two. Jordan Schultz gets two big scoops. He gets T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Same time. That's a best seat candidate. What a story. We're kind of on the edge of our seat all off season wondering, when's Jamar getting paid? Is that going to mean? Almost certainly it means T. Higgins isn't going to be a Bengal in the future. Plus, on top of that, you have Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals don't pay anybody. Yada, yada, yada. Who's going to play defense for this team? Well, they paid them both. And that makes them, this is an interesting tweet from Jason OTC. The Bengals will certainly be a case study. They now have $124 million per year invested in the top QB, top two wide receivers. Dolphins are second at $111.4 million. Eagles are third at $108 million. Cowboys are fourth at $98.5 million, and Lions fifth at $88.3 million. So mixed bag when it comes to paying like a trio, so to speak, or some combination of that, because you get the Lions, who are thought of as being an organization that's run really well right now, as well as the Eagles. The Dolphins just haven't been able to round the corner, and the Cowboys are kind of a laughingstock this time of year because they're not doing a damn thing. Yet you look at that and you're like, damn, well, they got a lot of money tied up in CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott and company. So the numbers were what, Nolan, on these deals?
Yeah, so the numbers for Chase, he benefited greatly from his deal coming after the Myles Garrett extension. His deal came out to just over $40 million per year, making him the highest paid non-QB of all time. And then Higgins' deal comes out to just about a little over $28 per year. He's going to sit just below that $30 million club in the receiver market, but certainly puts him at the top of the market within that group. And as they stated there, the highest paid wide receiver 2 of all time.
Quick time out here. Making as who the third Cowboy is. I think that's just Dak and CD.
Goodness gracious.
I think it's the new Kevontae Turpin deal.
Oh. The Turpin deal? What's the Turpin deal now?
He's about like 4.5. So they have that much money tied up between those two.
He's got a tiny slice of the pie. Yeah. But listen, if they can get Trey Hendrickson done, which it kind of feels like, it feels like they will, honestly, because of what it sounded like they did in the beginning of this process, which is just jack the price up of this guy. Bengals fans are saying like they only know the value of their players when they're shopping them. And it sounded like they wanted too much for Trey, who I think is obviously an amazing player. But he is in his 30s now. And you're talking about, like, I don't know what they were asking. Were they asking for a 1? I'm not sure. But supposedly the compensation they were seeking was laughable, per Diana Rossini. Not in those words. It seems like that was kind of just a process they were putting Trey through to say, hey, we tried to trade you, and now we're going to play hardball with you again. And I kind of wonder if part of them is like, listen, last year when you held out with no guarantees on your deal, yada, 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 you lost the game of chicken. And I think once he lost that game of chicken, part of the Bengals is maybe like, well, he's going to lose it again. Like, he's just not that type of guy who's going to hold out the whole season or anything like that. Like, Trey Hendrickson loves football too much. Maybe that's what they're banking on, and maybe they can get him at a reasonable number. The memes floating around are, the joke on the internet right now is like, who's playing defense for the Bengals? This is a year, and it is akin to the Philly thing. If you can draft well and you really load up on defense and you have like an 8 out of 10 draft, you can get the ball rolling again in Cincy. But you have to do that. You talk about all this money tied up in the offense, and then like in possibly Trey Hendrickson. Like right now on defense, who'd you mention? They got Osai back, but Miles Murphy's starting at defensive end, which is not like That's not a good sign.
Right, only 20 pressures for him all of last season. So not quite the production you want to see from, if you think of it like a receiver room, like a number one guy as far as edge rushers go.
It is stressful to play a team like the Bengals to say, like, I know their defense is terrible, but we're gonna have to score 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that's another way to do it. And maybe it doesn't seem sustainable. And traditionally, that sounds like a terrible strategy, but maybe they're just embracing that strategy as a floor. Like, even if you look at their team last year and they were terrible, they will expect to be better on defense this year. Like, they hit the reset button, they fired their guy. But, Make, you remember how many games they damn near won?
Yeah.
I mean, they had Kansas City dead to rights. They had Baltimore dead to rights twice.
Should have beaten New England week 1. Remember, they'll lose week 1. They always lose week 1.
They always lose the first month of the season. But, I mean, if you look back at last year, and obviously, if you took most teams that were kind of 500 and maybe just missed the playoffs or what have you, you'd say, hey, like, you're playing a big game of what if. And look how predictably this season came out. You lose the first 3 games. You're up and down. You lose some games you're not supposed to lose, like the Baltimore game, like the Kansas City game. I mean, shit, the Washington game. It took Jaden Daniels' coming out party to beat him. They get thumped by Philly. I thought that was the game where they had no shot. And then obviously the LA game was just an embarrassment. The LA game in LA was one of the wildest games I've ever seen.
8 losses on the season, 7 by 1 score or less.
And I thought they lost that shootout, when they hosted Pittsburgh fair and square. I felt like they just made too many mistakes. And the story in all of these games is going to be mistakes. They made so many. But my point is, if you look at this team and you're trying to sell yourself on the future, like running it back with the same group and hopefully improving the defense by 20%, if you can do that, they could be an 11-win team. That's the way they're thinking. Like, that's who they were last year. They didn't execute. Even with as bad as the defense was, they made mistakes. Like any team, I guess, that kept them out of the dance. The difference is if I apply that logic to some shitty team that hasn't been there before. This team's been in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. Not 3 years ago. How many years ago was that? 4 at this point?
4
But the point is, you got Joe Burrow. You've got these 2 receivers signed up. I think, hey, you got P. Ryan back. Little things like that might help this offense get even better next year. Gesicki seems like he's going to be a fixture there, right? Chase Brown was great this year.
Yep.
Improve the offensive line. Continue to improve the offensive line if you can. But I think the main thing you've got to do is load up on defense in the draft. And so this is maybe the most important draft in Joe Burrow's career, and it's not offense.
Yeah. Keeping that core together of Chase and Higgins is certainly a better alternative to letting Higgins go, not paying Gesicki, and then adding a couple above-average pieces on defense. You want to roll out with the high-octane offense and take your chances on defense in the draft. You have 3 top 100 picks. Those can be good players.
Up front, what kind of year is it in the draft for defensive line?
It sounds pretty deep with the D-line group, especially edge rushers too, which is big for them. Obviously, we talked about Myles Murphy. They need to see another step from him. And they'll also be banking on Chris Jenkins Jr., who they took in the 2nd round last year out of Michigan to take another step. He had 3 sacks this past year as a rookie, but definitely need more production across the board, and that's whether Hendrickson's there or not.
And, I really do think that's what it ends up being with Hendrickson, unless they change their tune and they ask for a lot less. Because, I could see an argument for letting him walk if you get premium capital that's coming down the pipe right now.
Yeah.
Like, there's no waiting a year to enjoy the fruits of your labor and shipping Trey out of town. Like, you've got to get a 2025 pick in the top 100, in my opinion, because when you have a quarterback like Joe and we're this far into the experiment, like you can't, hey, a year down the line with this defense. You have to attack this defense now in the draft.
Do you have any commentary on the defensive coordinator himself, your former coach, Al Golden?
Oh, it's Al Golden. I mean, I don't have commentary on Al as far as like his scheme.
What if he's got a pack of young guys, though? He's probably the right guy for a group like that.
That works out well.
Yeah.
To your point, that's a good point. Is like, listen, if it's going to be 8 rookies and 6 of them are going to play like meaningful snaps this year, like, yeah, it would help a guy to have a guy that just coached in college and can relate to these guys and understands the dynamic of who these guys are right now in the NIL era and what their makeup is and yada yada yada. But the bottom line is, like, it doesn't matter if you don't nail the picks.
Yep.
And so I can't speak to what Al's going to be as a defensive coach. I mean, Al coached me in 2006, 7. Like, I love Al Golden. Awesome dude. Al Grove's staff was him, Bobby Diaco, Mark D'Onofrio, just a bunch of psychos from the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And Al's a great dude, and he's a hard ass too. So,
and at 55, he's got a nice fade working.
He looks good.
He looks really good.
He's got a look.
Yeah.